Tonight, if you thought last week was chaotic at the White House, well, things aren't getting any better to the beginning of this week. I know it's just Monday, but things already off the rails. And speaking of the rails, the new tunnel under the Hudson that has been called the most important infrastructure project in the country, reportedly being derailed by the president. And you may not believe why. Also, thousands of people in our area still without power, and now another storm on the way. We'll get the latest on those outages and also the details of the nor'easter heading our way. Evening, everybody, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. Thank you very much for joining us. Well, the chaos at the White House, it does continue. It has been a week of mayhem, and now it is a punchline. This from SNL over the weekend.
I said I was going to run this country like a business. That business is a Waffle House at 2 a.m. Crazies everywhere, staff walking out in the middle of their shift, managers taking money out of the cash register to pay off the Russian mob.
Now, even the president, believe it or not, is usually not a good joke on these things. He even pokes some fun at himself, which is certainly rare. That at the annual Gridiron Dinner, which is basically a roast that was not on camera. He also made jokes about all of the chaos. Trump, he said he was late because Jared Kushner couldn't get through security. Not a bad line. He said Mike Pence is a little too interested in news about Russia and is asking about impeachment. The president also joked that he offered Attorney Jeff Sessions a ride over, but he recused himself. And the president said that he likes employee turnover and chaos and joked about whether Melania would be the next to go. But he didn't end there. He also decided to go off script here, and that's usually when he gets in trouble. He called Nancy Pelosi crazy. He also would like to run against Joe Biden. He said he'd kick his butt. Of course, he threw out the Pocahontas line when talking about Senator Elizabeth Warren. Well, the turnover that Trump was joking about earlier in that speech, not a laughing matter to many because it's not really that great for the country when there is no continuity. Take a look at this chart. We've seen a third of the White House staff in little over a year, and that is a record. It's twice as many defections as any recent administration in history. Communications Director Hope Hicks, she was, as you may know, the latest departure, giving her 2 weeks' notice late last week. Even Anthony Scaramucci, the communications director, the mooch here, not known for being one of stability himself. He was there for a whole 11 days before he was kicked to the corner. He said things are so bad, they might actually get worse. Take a listen.
Morale's terrible. And the reason why the morale's terrible is that the rule by fear and intimidation does not work in a civilian environment. And so here we are. It's messed up. It'll be up to the president to figure out if he wants to fix it or not. If he doesn't,
well, the question is whether or not the president is contributing to the turmoil.
But I predict more departures.
When you talk about morale, what does that mean? What do you think is going on?
Morale, there's a culture of intimidation. People afraid to talk to each other.
Coming from the president? They're afraid of the president?
No, I think it's the chief of staff.
And the circling fire continues. Now, the man who fired the mooch here, and he was taking direct aim, Chief of Staff John Kelly. He's joking about the situation, if you call it that. He's not known, I should say, for his sense of humor, but take a listen to him last week when he was at his old job at the Department of Homeland Security.
I miss every one of you every day. I went... Truly, at 6 months, the last thing I wanted to do was walk away from one of the great honors of my life, being the Secretary of Homeland Security. But I did something wrong, and God punished me, I guess.
It didn't end there. Trump also not done slamming Jeff Sessions, his beleaguered attorney general, hammering him again on Twitter, the president did, because he wants an internal probe over whether the FBI abused its power during the Russia probe. He called Sessions disgraceful. And when Sessions had the temerity to respond, which is rare for him, Trump reportedly was livid. Trump's anger with Sessions had started, as you may remember, when the attorney general recused himself from the Russia investigation. Now, speaking of that, the president, with another outrageous tweet about Russia, here goes. Quote, why did the Obama administration start an investigation into the Trump campaign with zero proof of wrongdoing long before the election in November? wanted to discredit so crooked H would win, unprecedented, bigger than Watergate. Plus, Obama did nothing about Russian meddling, which the last time I remember was he said there was no Russian meddling, but apparently now there is, and it's Obama's fault. Now, that probe appears to be even widening as we speak and has nothing to do with one Barack Obama. Trump's business interests and finances continue to be in the spotlight. Last year, Trump said looking at that stuff would cross, in his words, a red line that could cause him to fire one Bob Mueller. But he hasn't made another peep about that. Very curious. The Times reporting Mueller is now following the money to the Middle East, reportedly looking into whether people in the United Arab Emirates gave money to the Trump campaign to curry favor if in fact he won. That is also likely leading to a more exhaustive probe than any foreign cash that found its way to Trump. And as if you needed more, a former campaign aide named Sam Nunn, he has just been subpoenaed and asked to appear before a grand jury in D.C. And only in this bizarre world did Nunberg reportedly say he won't comply and he is daring Mueller to arrest him. I'm not an attorney here, pal, but not the best advice that I think you're getting from counsel. And there's also more drama with Jared and Ivanka, this time whether or not the president's daughter and son-in-law are on their way out, and whether or not Trump, the father, is actually having his chief of staff, General Kelly, show them to the door. And I saved the best kicker for last. Stormy Daniels, remember her, the adult film star? Well, usually a scandal that involves a former porn star and a president of the United States would lead every newscast and dominate news cycles, but this one not getting a lot of play. It shows you just how crazy things are. You'll remember that the Trump attorney Michael Cohen said he paid Stormy $130,000 out of his own pocket as part of a non-disclosure agreement. And that all happened coincidentally 12 days before Election Day. Now, Cohen is reportedly upset because, wait for it, Trump never reimbursed him. The White House saying the campaign nor Trump had anything to do with Stormy or the money. Plus, the Wall Street Journal, remember, that's a Murdoch-owned paper, reporting the first Republic bank that made that wire transfer to Miss Daniels. Well, it reported the transaction to the Treasury Department, saying it was suspicious. It means it, too, could be made now part of the investigation. Again, all of this in 1 week. And we didn't even get to the craziness over tariffs, the trade war Trump actually wants here, but we will talk about that stuff a little bit later in the program. Let's bring in our panel. Jeannie Zaino, professor of political science at Iona College, also senior advisor at the consulting firm Applied Techonomics. Scott Vanderhoff, former Republican county executive for 5 terms, now co-chairman of the Palisades Institute of Dominican College. I need to take a breath. All right. I joke around about all this stuff, Scott, and some of it is so surreal you have to laugh. But there are a lot of reports, Washington Post, but others have verified it, that it's getting very dark in the White House, where the lack of stability, the mood swings, the lack of anyone to try and contain the president from his war, self-destructive impulses are there. And the departure of the Hope Hicks, or from any original team that was with him during the campaign, and the further isolation of him, it's getting to the point of not just being unhealthy here, but dangerous. Don't you get the sense we kind of crossed some, I don't know, Rubicon of some kind in the last week, where it went from, you know, being the fodder for SNL to now being something that should be concerning to all of us?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I personally wake up every morning wondering what the headline's going to be. I mean, seriously, about, you know, what happens at the White House. When you consider all of the really major issues, the trade issue, Korea, okay, Russia, all the international things, the Mideast, all of this stuff is a distraction, not just for the White House, I mean, but not for us just, but the White House as well. And if you look at it from a perspective of people leaving in the way they are and why they're leaving, it does raise concerns. And then you look at the, you know, the president's behavior in some of these open public meetings, and you're wondering exactly where we're going. I mean, and for those of us who want us to do the right thing and want to, you know, at least see sort of the conservative side of Republicanism, a moderate though I may be, you wonder where it all ends up. Right. But you really, just getting to your question, from an international perspective, how we handle our allies and our non-allies, the people who we're competing with, one has to be concerned about it.
And you know, Jeannie, whatever I think, and I made it pretty clear, I have not been a fan of Donald Trump as both a candidate and as a president, but every presidency, Republican or Democrat, faces crises, not even of their own making, but the world doesn't go according to a script. What happens if Venezuela devolves into complete chaos? What happens if North Korea isn't just bluster at some point? What if Russia decides to go across other borders here and do something else? Do you imagine what this president's going to do or say? I'm literally, legitimately, and I don't care anyone's politics here. This is worrisome right now because think about it. He walked into an environment with a booming market, okay? You want to give him a little credit and say he's part of it? I don't care. But my point is, things have been relatively stable, knock on wood. What happens if we have a crisis? Just last week as an example, my gosh.
Yeah, and to your point, this is where so many people are concerned. It's almost like we're hanging by a shoestring. And should something drop, how would this White House respond? And could it respond? Is so understaffed, and we have a president with whom you can't have any sense of certainty in terms of how he's going to respond. And so it's, you know, you look at whether it's North Korea, you look at whether it's, to your point, Venezuela, you look at it whether it's Russia, you look at whether it's a, you know, some kind of horrific and God forbid some kind of issue in the United States that's domestic terrorism or otherwise. How would this president respond? He's understaffed, he's under pressure, and he is not prepared to handle this. And that's where this...
Have we seen one thing, Jeannie, in the last 14, 15 months or more, whatever it's been, that his response at its base would not be self-serving? My point is, whatever you think, I don't care if you liked Obama or you like Bush or you like Clinton or you like the Bush before him, at the end, whether you like them or not, they would address the nation and you believe they were acting in the best interests of the nation. I would hope this president would do the same thing, but somehow, some way, it will be about him. It will be about advancing, you know, covering his own self, trying to shift attention from something else. That there is not just a natural inclination to just, in a crisis, America first.
And I would say, and I'm just going to, I know this is not going to be popular, but I'm going to say, we've seen this with both Obama and Trump when it comes to the issue of Russian meddling in the election. Obama should have responded without all the, what if Hillary Clinton wins? How would I be perceived? We should have responded the way that the United States should respond when somebody interferes in our election. And Barack Obama owns a lot of that. And Donald Trump does as well.
I do, but just look at the motivations for just that.
Oh, I get that.
Right? He was concerned that he was going to be perceived as playing favorites,
but that's
right?
what I'm saying. Everybody's concerned about themselves.
Right? But Trump isn't worrying about, well, will anyone perceive me as favorites? Everything he's done, Scott, has been to look out for number one. He will take credit even after a school shooting, for crying out loud. So I come back to this full circle. They call you to come work in the White House, right? You know, I've talked to other Republican operatives who've, you know, hemmed and hawed on this one. You want to serve your nation and if called upon in any capacity, but do you want to be? That's the problem. You're not getting, forget about the best and brightest. You're not getting the D team for some of these jobs. Look at some of the people who are getting in trouble. The Carter Pages of the world, not only the Scaramucci's here, but the Papadopouloses. How did these people even get in the room? You know what I'm saying? He's not well served by good people. Maybe that's his own fault. I think largely it is. But that's the other consideration here.
Yeah, no, and the people he has selected, like the Attorney General and others, he bashes. So he, you know, the HUD, who's the HUD secretary? Carson, who's spending money on furniture and what have you. And I mean, it seems like the decisions are just, first of all, he's delegated too much. It's just all over the place. And Jeannie's right. I mean, there is, you know, thank goodness for John Kelly, because for whatever you say, I mean, he's doing, it would appear that he's doing the control, some of the control that's going on there. I really don't think he's trying to fire Trump's children, by the way. But I do think he's trying to control things. But
But then even look at General Kelly. Look at even General Kelly. And look about the bodyguard that they had there. The guy that was literally handing the most classified documents to the president, Rob Porter. And even there, where you want competence out of this man on our screen, General Kelly, that he would permit a guy who had multiple ex-wives with domestic, and he knows about it, and we allow this to continue.
But to your point, how can we expect any of this with people who have no experience in Washington, no experience with the Republican Party? If you're going to be anti-Washington, anti-Republican, then you're going to get what you paid for, and that's what the voters got. They got somebody.
And the president napalmed every bridge here. Nobody's going to come.
Yeah.
There's an interesting situation, though, here. Very interesting, I think, and darker than one we know about.
Could it be darker?
Yeah, this whole Emirates thing.
Oh, it's awful.
Watch out, because you had a guy coming from private enterprise who believed you can bring anybody in, sales guys, deal what he had to do the deals, okay, that had to be done. He's trying to transition from that to being president of the United States, and it's that piece of time, that period of time, right, as he was being elected and was elected. There's stuff there, I am now convinced, that goes well beyond the Russian investigation and meddling and whatever
But
they
that
did.
to me is the most unseemly part, and I'm not a Boy Scout in this, but there's been no one in our country's history who has tried to profit off the White House while they're in the White House. Okay, this is not a job you do to line your pockets, but the idea that the same guy who's billing maximum dollars to the Secret Service to protect him, the same guy, think about this. Just think about this. You make a pledge to a veterans group and make sure everyone knows you're promising them $5 million. And they have to hunt you down for you to make good on your pledge. And then you, 2 months after your wife delivers, you have an affair with a porn star. Your attorney writes a check for $130,000 to keep her quiet 2 weeks before the election, and you don't pay your attorney. You try and stiff him for the bill. That's more than unseemly. That is self-destructive, I mean, my gosh, we've had that before. I grant you he's not the first one. But the idea that you're going to stiff the guy on paying who's trying to make your payment for you.
Have we had that before?
I don't know about that.
I mean, the way you said it is so beautifully.
Isn't it just
beyond the pale?
It's great for me at 6 o'clock every night. I could close my eyes and 4 o'clock I get a new show every day. But
for what?
For what? And for as a country, I just got the sense, I'm just curious if you guys agreed, we've had craziness for the last year. There's stories that would have led for a month that barely get mentioned as the sixth story with everything else going on. But at a certain point, I know everybody looks at the indexes in the market as like, oh, well, we do well in spite of them. I think it's taken a toll on all of us. And I don't care your political persuasion.
I think it has. And I have a question for you in the media. The media is after each other. I mean, this whole fight back and forth between the major, and they're fighting
each other. It's really one person against everybody else, frankly. I mean, I'm not counting the Alex Joneses and the rest. It's one against the rest.
And I would just say, look at Texas today with the primary. You see early voter turnout amongst Democrats up like 100% versus Republicans. Republicans are going to get killed in this environment. They are shooting themselves in the foot. I don't understand it, to your point. What are they doing? Because it makes no sense for them long term at all.
And to be fair to you, you said a year ago, to the ruination of their party, if they didn't make a separation. It's like fool's gold. You attach yourself, you said it at the time, and I never appreciate just how right you were, that the party is more than one person, and the party has to have an ideal, and it has to have a core that it at least believes in. And think about it, we're going to get into it this hour, some of the issues that they've allowed to be co-opted by a person who's not even a Republican. And then that's going to stay in their party, and I believe they'll send it come this November. All right, when we come back, everyone, the president's tariff plan is creating chaos here, and our allies are concerned. They're doing more than just talking. There could be legitimate consequences. His own cabinet confused, to put it politely, and now nobody even knows whether or not he's going to follow through with it all. We'll catch up on the latest in debate.